Good morning everyone. Basa na tayo ng Bible. To Chronicles chapter 23 and 24. And John chapter 15. Buong chapter 15 guys. So dito na tayo sa John muna. Basa. John chapter 15. Verse 1 up to 27 ito. Jesus teaches about the vine and the branches. I am the true vine, and my Father is the gardener. He cuts off every branch in me that bears no fruit, while every branch that does bear fruit, he prunes, so that it will be even more fruitful. You are already clean because of the word I have spoken to you. Remain in me, and I will remain in you. No branch can bear fruit by itself. It must remain in the vine. Neither can you bear fruit unless you remain in me. I am the vine, you are the branches. If a man remains in me, and I in him, he will bear much fruit. Apart from me, you can do nothing. If anyone does not remain in me, he is like a branch that is thrown away and withers. Such branches are picked up, thrown into the fire, and burned. If you remain in me, my words remain in you, ask whatever you wish, and it will be given. And it will given you. O wish na guys. Ano pa nga ba wish natin? Maalis na COVID-19 kahapon swab testing na naman kami. COVID-19 testing na naman kami. Alam mo yung napuperwisyo ka. So trouble kasi matagal na masyado yung COVID-19. So hanggang up to now pa rin, sige pa rin. Kung inalis na ni Father God yan, di wala na tayong problema, di ba? This is to my Father's glory that you bear much fruit, showing yourselves to be my disciples. As the Father has loved me, so have I loved you. Now remain in my love. If you obey my commands, you will remain in my love, just as I have obeyed my Father's commands and remain in his love. I have told you this so that my joy may be in you, and that your joy may be complete. Sa verse 12, my command is this, love each other as I have loved you. Greater love has no one that he laid down his life for his friends. You are my friends if you do what I command. I no longer call you servants, because a servant does not know his master's business. Instead, I have called you friends, for everything that I learned from my Father I have made known to you. You did not choose me, but I chose you, and appointed you to go and bear fruit that will last. Then the Father will give you whatever you ask in my name. This is my command, love each other. Nakalagay guys, so, then the Father will give you whatever you ask in my name. So, bakit po ang tagal-tagal na namin hinihingi na umalis na si COVID-19? Tsaka yung mga may sakit, pagalingin na. Yun lang naman ang parati nating dito sa Bible. This is my command, love each other. Jesus warns about the world's hatred. If the world hates you, keep in mind that it hated me first. If you belong to the world, it would love you at its own. As it is, you do not belong to the world, but I have chosen you out of the world. That is why the world hates you. Remember the words I spoke you. No servant is greater than his master. If they persecuted me, they will persecute you also. If they obeyed my teaching, they will obey yours also. They will treat you this way because of my name, for they do not know the one who sent me. Ako talaga, diretso ako kay Father God, the one who sent you, Jesus. Doon ako diretso lagi. If I had not come and spoken to them, they would not be guilty of sin. Now, however, they have no excuse for their sin. He who hates me hates my Father as well. If I had not done among them what to, what ano yan, what no one else did, they would not be guilty of sin. But now they have seen these miracles, and yet they have hated both me and my Father. But this is to fulfill what is written in their law. They hated me without reason. Meron bang ganun, guys? Mamumunhi ka kahit walang rason? Sa verse 26. Pero sabi, the more you hate, the more you love. Sa verse 26. When the counselor comes, whom I will send to you from the Father, the Spirit of truth, who goes out from the Father, who will testify about me. And you also must testify, for you have been with me from the beginning. So, hanggang 27 lang siya, no? Buong chapter 15 nandyan. Dito na tayo sa chapter 23, 24 and 23 and 24 ng 2 Chronicles. Kita mo pag may tanda, guys, ang bilis buklatin ng libro, ay ng Bible. Chapter 23. 2 Chronicles, chapter 23. Basa. Grabe pawis, so pati ilong. In the 7th year, Jehoiada showed his strength. He made a covenant with the commanders of units of 100. Azariah, son of Jeroham, Ishmael, son of Jehohanan. Tingnan mo, guys, ang hirap bigkasin ng mga pangalan ng araw, no? Azariah, son of Obed, Maaziah, son of Adaiah, and Elishaphat, son of Zikri. They went throughout Judah and gathered the Levites and the heads of Israelite families from all the towns. When they came to Jerusalem, the whole assembly made covenant with the king of the temple of God. Jehoiada said to them, the king's son shall reign as the Lord promised concerning the descendants of David. Now, this is, alam nyo guys, kung sino yung anak ng hari nung araw, yun ang magiging hari din pag namatay yung hari. Pag namatay yung tatay nila, so sila ulit magiging hari. Kumbaga sa walang election. Automatic siya, yung kung sino yung anak na panganay, yun ang magre-reign na magiging king. Hindi katulad natin, may election tayo. So, freedom kung sinong pipiliin ng tao. Sa kanila nung araw, kung sino yung anak, yun ang magiging hari. Alin gusto nyo? May election o yung appointed lang, automatic? Jehoiada said, no, tanong lang yun ha, ay reaction lang yun ha. Ayon lang naman kasi sa na-observe lang natin sa nababasa natin kung sino yung anak siyang nagiging hari. Kapalit. So, walang election. Jehoiada said to them, the king's son shall reign as the Lord promised concerning the descendants of David. Now, this is what you are to do. A third of you priests and Levites who are going on duty on the Sabbath are to keep watch at the doors. A third of you at the royal palace, and a third at the foundation gate, and all the other men are in the courtyards of the temple of the Lord. No one is to enter the temple of the Lord except the priests and the Levites on duty. They may enter because they are consecrated, but all the other men are to guard what the Lord has assigned to them. The Levites are to station themselves around the king, each man with his weapons, in his hand. Anyone who enters the temple must be put to death. Ah, yeah. Grabe, no? Sabi na sa inyo ang parusak, puro kamatayan Stay close to the king wherever he goes. The Levites and all the men of Judah did just as Jehoiada the priest ordered. Each one took his men, those who were going on duty on the Sabbath, and those who were going off duty, for Jehoiada the priest had not released any of the divisions. Then he gave the commanders of units of a hundred the spurs, and the large and small shields that had belonged to King David, and that were in the temple of God. He stationed all the men, each with his weapon in his hand, around the king, near the altar and the temple from the south side of the north side of the temple. Jehoiada and his sons brought out the king's son and put the crown on him. They presented him with a copy of the covenant and proclaimed him king. They anointed him and shouted, "Long live the king!" Oh, dito pala galing yun. Long live. Wala, famous kasi yung salita na yan long live. Diyan pala galing sa Bible. When Adalia, so gawin kayo natin description to. Yung, mamaya. Yung chapter 23 ng Chronicles, verse 11. When Athaliah heard the noise of the people running and cheering the king, she went to them at the temple of the Lord. She looked, and there was the king standing by his pillar at the entrance. The officers and the trumpeters were beside the king, and all the people of the land were rejoicing and blowing trumpets, and singers with musical instruments were leading the praises. Then Athaliah tore her robes and shouted, "Treason, treason!" Jehoiada the priest sent out the commanders of units 100 who were in charge of the troops, and said to them, "Bring her out between the ranks, and put to the sword anyone who follows her." For the priest had said, "Do not put her to death at the temple of the Lord." So desist here as she reached the entrance of the horse gate on the palace grounds, and there they put her to death. Yung pinatay si Athaliah, guys. Yung queen. Jehoiada then made a covenant that he and the people and the king would be the Lord's people. All the people went to the temple of Baal and tore it down. They smashed the altars and idols and killed Matan, the priest of Baal, in front of the altars. Then Jehoiada placed the oversight of the temple of the Lord in the hands of the priests, who were Levites, to whom David had made assignments in the temple to present the burnt offerings of the Lord as written in the law of Moses, with rejoicing and singing as David had ordered. He also stationed doorkeepers at the gate of the Lord's temple, so that no one who was in any way unclean might enter. He took with him the commanders of hundreds, the nobles, the rulers of the people, and all the people of the land, and brought the king down from the temple of the Lord. They went into the palace through the upper gate and seated the king on the royal throne, and all the people of the land rejoiced, and the city was quiet because Athaliah had been slain with the sword. Joash repairs the temple. Joash kita mo guys, ito yung batang tinago si Joash. Tapos 7 years old lang siya, ginawa na siyang king. O, tingnan mo ha, anong magagawa ng isang 7 years old? So, ang mag-aano pa rin dito, yung priest pa rin, si Jehoiada. Kasi 7 years old lang si Joash, Parang naglalaro pa lang yan nung araw, tapos king ka na. Joash was 7 years old when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem 40 years. His mother's name was Sibaya. Paano hindi 40 years? 7 years old nga lang yan. So, mahaba pa yung buhay niya. Okay guys, basahin ulit natin sa verse 24. Joash was 7 years old when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem 40 years. His mother's name was Zibiah. She was from Beersheba. Joash did what was right in the eyes of the Lord all the years of Jehoiada the priest. Sabi na si Jehoiada yung, ano, kumbaga sa ano guys, ang parang nagpapatakbo ng kingdom, parang si Jehoiada pa rin. Kasi siya may ano kay Joas eh, kay King Joas. Jehoiada chose 2 wives for him and he had sons and daughters. Tignan mo lang, pare na yan guys ha. Kumuha pa siya ng 2 wives para kay Joas. Siya ang kumuha. Siya ang pumili pala. Jehoiada chose 2 wives for him and he had sons and daughters. Sometime later, Joas decided to restore the temple of the Lord. He called together the priests and Levites and said to them, "Go to the towns of Judah and collect the money due to annually from all Israel." Due annually pala. Sorry. Ulitin natin. Go to the towns of Judah and collect the money due annually from all Israel to repair the temple of your God. Do it now, but the Levites did not act at once. So, hindi siya sinunod. Therefore, the king summoned Jehoiada, the chief priest, and sino ba yung nagpaano sa kanya? O, si Jehoiada ga. Yung, kumbaga sa ano siya, yung right hand. Therefore, the king summoned Jehoiada, the chief priest, and said to him, "Why haven't you required the Levites to bring in from Judah and Jerusalem the tax imposed by Moses, the servant of the Lord, and by the assembly of Israel for the tent of the testimony?" Now the sons of that wicked woman Athaliah had broken into the temple of God and had used even its sacred objects for the Baals. At the king's command, a chest was made and placed outside at the gate of the temple of the Lord. A proclamation was then issued in Judah and Jerusalem that they should bring the Lord the tax that Moses. So, nung araw pa lang may tax na talaga. The Lord the tax that Moses, the servant of God, had required of Israel in the desert. All the officials and all the people brought their contributions gladly, dropping them into the chest until it was full. Whenever the chest was brought in by the Levites to the king's officials and they saw that there was a large amount of money, the royal secretary and the officer of the chief priest would come and empty the chest and carry it back to its place. Wait lang, at ako'y pawis na pawis na. Yung kamay ko, grabe na pawis. Ulitin nga natin yung tax, guys. Natutuwa lang ako. Ibig sabihin, nung araw pa pala nag-i-impose na ng tax. Kahit sa, ano, sa verse 9 yun eh. A proclamation was then issued in Judah and Jerusalem that they should bring to the Lord the tax that Moses, the servant of God, had required of Israel in the desert. All the officials and all the people brought their contributions gladly, dropping them into the chest until it was full. Whenever the chest was brought in by the Levites, the king's officials, and they saw that there was large amount of money, the royal secretary and the officer of the chief priest would come and empty the chest and carry it back to its place. They did this regularly and collected a great amount of money. The king and Jehoiada gave it to the men who carried out the work required for the temple of the Lord. They hired masons and carpenters to restore the Lord's temple and also workers in iron and bronze to repair the temple. The men in charge of the work were diligent, and the repairs progressed under them. They rebuilt the temple of God according to its original design and reinforced it. When they had finished, they brought the rest of the money to the king and Jehoiada, and with it were made articles for the Lord's temple, articles for the service, and for the burnt offerings, and also dishes and other objects. Ang ingay sa labas, sa kalye. yung mga sasakyan. Naririnig niyo. Maririnig pala sa video, sorry. They hired masons and carpenters to restore the Lord's temple and also workers in iron and bronze to repair the temple. Verse 13 tayo. The men in charge of the work were diligent and the repairs progressed under them. They rebuilt the temple of God according to its original. Pinalik lang pala natin basa. Sorry. To its original design and reinforced it. When they had finished, they brought the rest of the money to the king and Jehoiada, and with it, kita mo guys, hindi gaanong binabanggit yung pangalan ni Joash. Kundi tawag lang sa kanya king. Pero si Jehoiada yung priest, laging binabanggit. And with it were made articles for the Lord's temple, articles for the service, and for the burnt offerings, and also dishes and other objects of gold and silver. So it means nung araw, yung government at yung priest, magkadikitan talaga. Kung basta right hand ng government, yung priest. Kasi yun ang laging kaano ng mga hapare, laging sa priest. And with it were made articles for the Lord's temple, articles for the service, and for the burnt offerings. Yun lang, observation ko lang yan, ha. Huwag nyo intindihin yung opinion ko. Observation ko lang kasi yan. And also this is another objects of gold and silver. As long as Jehoiada lived, burnt offerings were presented continually in the temple of the Lord. Now Jehoiada was old and full of years, and he died at the age of 130. Ay, grabe. Nung araw, 130 inaabot. Ay, mayroon pa ako nakita dati, diba? 900. Sino ba yun, guys? Yung umabot ng 900 plus years. Mga pang 800. Nakalimutan ko na kung anong pangalan noon eh. Sobrang, pag gano'n nakatanda, parang ayaw ko na mabuhay ng gano'n katanda. Parang uugod-ugod ka na, buhay ka pa, parang gano'n. Parang ang hirap-hirap naman mabuhay ng gano'n. So, sa verse 15 yun eh. Now Jehoiada was old and full of years, and he died at the age of 130. He was buried with the kings in the city of David because of the good he had done in Israel for God and his temple. The wickedness of Joash. Ayan na. After the death of Jehoiada, the officials of Judah came and paid homage to the king, and he listened to them. They abandoned the temple of the Lord, the God of their fathers, and worshipped Asherah poles and idols. Because of their guilt, God's anger came upon Judah and Jerusalem, although the Lord sent prophets to the people to bring them back to him. And though they testified against them, they would not listen. Then the Spirit of God came upon Zechariah, son of Jehoiada the priest. He stood before the people and said, This is what God says. Why do you disobey the Lord's commands? You will not prosper because you have forsaken the Lord. He has forsaken you. But they plotted against him, and by order of the king, they stoned him to death. In the courtyard of the Lord's temple. So, pinatay din yung anak ni Jehoiada, si Zechariah. Tama ba? King Joash did not remember the kindness of Zechariah's father. Yeah, true. Ikaw naman ang tagal kang inalagaan ng pare eh. Jehoiada has shown him but killed his son, who said as he lay dying, May the Lord see this and call you to account. At the turn of the year, the army of Aram marched against Joash. It invaded Judah and Jerusalem and killed all the leaders of the people. They sent all the plunder to their king in Damascus. Although the Aramean army had come with only a few men, the Lord delivered into their hands much larger army because Judah had forsaken the Lord, the God of their fathers. Judgment was executed on Joash. When the Arameans withdrew, they left Joash severely wounded. His officials conspired against him for murdering the son of Jehoiada, the priest, and they killed him in his bed. So he died and was buried in the city of David, but not in the tombs of the kings. Those who conspired against him were Zabad, son of Shemith, an Ammonite woman, and Jehozabad, son of Shimrith, a Moabite woman. The account of his sons, the many prophecies about him, and the record of the restoration of the temple of God are written in the annotations on the book of the kings. And Amaziah, his son, succeeded him as king. Sabi sa inyo kung sino yung anak yung talagang nagiging hari. So, swerte tayo guys sa ating bansa. Merong eleksyon. Meron tayong freedom pumili ng kung sino yung gusto nating mamuno. Hanggang dito lang siya. Hanggang 24 lang. Ay, hanggang 24. Yung, yung chapter 24 ng to Chronicles is hmm, hanggang 27 din. Favorite. Favorite numbers. Bye everyone. God bless.